Yeah. Rip, had to do it. It's busted.
Hey everyone, I think most of you guys are used to seeing my main, Artemis, here on this channel. Today I'll be showing you the only other character that I play, Volanway. I'm a Stamblade main at heart, but when it comes to group PvP or PvPing with some friends, Nightblades are pretty PP poo-poo, especially Stamblades. While their class toolkits are spectacular for solo play, they do not provide a lot of utility to a group composition, which is why I created Volanway, my Magplar support character. I have 3 years of PvP experience playing this character, and likewise, the support role in PvP. In this video, I'll be going over some PvP support theorycraft, how to go about building your support, the kinds of sets that you'd want to consider, the kinds of skills and utility that you'd want to bring to a group, as well as some of the gameplay practices that you're going to want to get comfortable with. Supports get a lot of slack from 3-head PvPers that would be the type to play deathmatch in a low MMR below 50 Chaos Fall match and get a score like 20-4 and think it's impressive. Don't let that discourage you from playing one. The truth is, supports can be pretty vital to group compositions, and creating a proper support build requires as much theory crafting as creating any kind of damage dealing build. While the damage dealers are theory crafting how to push out the most damage each patch, the supports are theory crafting how to best counter that. We use healing combos instead of damage combos. And sure, while the playstyle isn't for everyone, I personally get the same thrill and rush that I'd get from nailing an in-cap combo on my Stamblade, from burst healing an ally and saving them from almost certain death, or from pushing into a keep while heavily outnumbered and surviving to tell the tale because you healed your team as they experienced ult dump after ult dump. Playing support and seeing the kind of impact that you can have on your team as they accomplish feats that would otherwise be near impossible without a support can be a really rewarding experience. A support is going to want to build themselves in a manner that complements and supports their group. See what I did there? Depending on your group composition, there are many different ways to build your support toon. Maybe you're playing with a bunch of MLG pros that all have cross-healing skills of their own, so you only really need to slap on a set like Transmutation or Sanctuary, and then build relatively offensively the way a damage dealer would. Or maybe your group has all built themselves very selfishly and not very defensively, so that they can focus more on dishing out a whole bunch of damage. So you need to incorporate more healing skills into your build to make up for that. Maybe your group is lacking a bunch of useful debuffs, so you can incorporate those into your build and potentially free up bar space on your damage dealing allies' skill bars. The kinds of fights that you'll get into will also shape how you build your support character. Are you fighting outnumbered? Maybe consider wearing a tanky set so that you can afford to take aggro until your allies shake it off of you. Are you playing with 10 people in your group? If they know how to stack well, you may be able to wear 2 support sets and heal in light armor. Remember, most competent groups will single out and focus the healer, so you're going to want to be able to handle some pressure and keep yourself alive. Although your own skills and group mates will also help you accomplish this. All things to consider. Just remember, you're playing a support toon, not a carry toon. You should strive to make your teammates' jobs easier and help them get back on their feet should they fall. You shouldn't be expected to carry them on your back. Don't build around incompetence. If your mates are having learn to play issues, it's not really up to you to accommodate them. That's a band-aid fix for a more serious problem. If you do build in this manner, your group mates will struggle to learn and become better PvPers from relying too heavily on your presence. Supports are not meant to serve as training wheels, okay? At least that's how I see it. For example, if your teammates ask you to wear a set that provides them with more sustain because they're struggling to sustain themselves, I would deliberate with them. One of the first things that you have to learn as a PvPer is to be able to sustain yourself in a fight. If you run out of resources, you're dead. Ideally, PvPers should already be able to sustain themselves in a duel or when playing with a group of friends. They really shouldn't crutch on another player to provide the sustain for them, especially if that other player is already taking care of a majority of their healing. Perhaps your teammates haven't yet learned how to heavy attack weave properly, or they're overcasting their buffs, or spamming damage or healing over time skills, or roll dodging too liberally. These learn to play issues need to be remedied by the players making them, not by you, so don't feel obligated to build around them. Now that you have a better idea about the kinds of situations and group compositions that will affect how you go about building a support, let's get into the sets that you should consider wearing depending on the aforementioned criteria. I'll recommend some selfish sets and some group support sets that are worth considering. Perhaps you may want to wear one from each group, or perhaps you're in a position where you can afford to wear 2 support sets. Again, that would depend on situation and circumstance. For selfish sets, I'd consider the following. Mark of the Pariah. A solid set that can make you very tanky by providing you with greater resistances the lower your health gets. If you're wondering if this set is a better option than Fortified Brass, it definitely is. As of recording this video, Pariah outperforms Fortified Brass at 90% health. This is one of my current favorite selfish sets for my support plar. Eternal Vigor can serve as a good tanky sustain set, and the bonus health recovery while you're below 50% health is appreciated, although it definitely isn't as good as it used to be. If sustain isn't much of an issue for you, I'd recommend Pariah because you will ultimately be tankier. Shacklebreaker is a craftable set, which means that you can go ahead and craft it in heavy if you'd like. I used to use this set back when I was still more of a novice at playing support in PvP. But the additional stam and mag recovery that this set provides you, as well as the extra lines of mag and stam, can help you sustain yourself on the battlefield, especially with all of that extra stam. You'll find that you have to block a lot as a support, so the stamina sustain will come in clutch. I'd recommend this set until you get more comfortable with sustaining yourself. Another craftable option, Daedric Trickery has been a pretty viable defensive set option for a lot of different kinds of builds, and supports are no exception. The major buffs that it provides can help you become tankier or more mobile, which is super important as a support, by the way, or even give you major heroism so that you can cast more ultimates. For group support sets, I'd consider the following. Transmutation. A great set for burst metas. If people are hitting some fat crits, I'd highly consider this set. By utilizing Transmutation coupled with the free crit resist that everyone gets now, your groupmates can look into using other traits besides Impen on some or all of their gear pieces, such as well-fitted or reinforced. Or they could stick with Impen and be unfazed by crit damage. The Transmutation proc carries over if you swap bars, so you can 1-bar it, but be mindful of your uptimes. You'll want to make sure your teammates have the iconic blue Transmutation swirls around their characters as often as possible. If you find yourself in pretty stationary battles, Winter's Respite can provide some extra healing over time. If you're playing a class that already doesn't have some kind of class ability ground hot, this set really should be considered. In proc and dot metas, it doesn't hurt to have some built-in cleanses, like the one Curse Eater provides. In these kinds of metas, you'll often find yourself in sticky situations. Your ally could be dotted up pretty heavily by a dot decay, so much so that they enter execute. You then have to decide in that moment if the better option would be to cleanse your ally of those nasty dots before burst healing them, or if the better move would be to burst heal your ally first in an attempt to get them out of execute before cleansing those dots. The answer to this question depends on the meta. If dots aren't too insane and if your ally isn't defiled, I'd go with the burst heal first. If dots are hitting just as hard or harder than spammables, or if your ally has a major debuff on them, I would go for the cleanse first. Well, why not both at the same time? Save yourself some global cooldowns and use a set like Curse Eater, which can proc from a direct heal. This way you can burst heal with a skill like Breath of Life and remove negative effects at the same time. I don't think I need to pitch this set to you. 10% extra healing received for you and your allies is pretty cracked. Do recall that the term healing received refers to any incoming heals. This includes your own, of course, but it also includes and would likewise affect any cross-healing that your allies are doing. The only issue with this set is that it would be ideal if it was active on both bars, but it's a light armor set. If you're looking to build selfishly with a heavy armor set, it'll mean that you'll either have to forfeit a monster set or an arena weapon to be able to fit this set into your build comfortably. You may have to get creative with this one. Powerful Assault is a great support set. Instead of providing your allies with heals, it boosts their weapon damage. This will allow your teammates to push out even more damage, and their healing does get indirectly buffed as well, since weapon and spell damage does affect healing. I'll now show you guys a speedrun of some other really great monster sets, mythics, and arena weapons that you should consider using in your support builds. Alright, I'm not going to go over every single class and every single skill that you should use, or else we'd be here all day, but I can tell you a couple of the kinds of abilities that you're going to want to have in your arsenal when looking to play support in PvP. Not every class has access to a cleanse in their class toolkit, and even if they do, they may not choose to slot it. However, cleansing is a very essential ability to bring to a group composition. Besides removing harmful damage over time effects from your allies, a cleanse can also remove really nasty debuffs, like major vulnerability or major defile. If your class doesn't have a means to be able to purge allies, consider utilizing the universal purge that you can acquire from the Alliance War support skill line. Besides cycling your buffs and ensuring that they remain up, you're also going to want to fit in a healing over time ability, or 2 or 3, into your healing rotation. One of the best HOTS comes from the Restoration Staff skill line. Depending on your group comp, either regeneration morph will do. I prefer Radiating Regeneration because its duration lasts longer, so I find it easier to fit into a rotation, and this allows me to comfortably proc Transmutation when I swap bars. If you have any class HOTS like the Templar Ritual, you should definitely use those as well. Proc them on the feet of your allies while they brawl, or cast them slightly in front of wherever your allies are heading should they decide to reposition themselves. Synergies are quite handy. Besides returning a little bit of resources, they often also have a secondary effect. Energy Orb is one of my favorite skills that provides a synergy, for example. It can be synergized with by multiple people, making it an amazing source of constant burst healing if your team is nice and stacked and brawling in the same location for quite some time. The HOT, Resource Return, and Burst Heal every time someone synergizes with this glowing ball of light makes this a great healing skill. All classes, well besides Nightblade, can easily supply unique synergies to the group. Take a look at what your synergy skills do and see if they'd be useful for your group to use. This one's a given. You need a means to heal yourself and your allies when they're in deep shit. You know, when HOTS aren't going to cut it. Burst heals tend to be quite expensive, resource-wise, so you really shouldn't be spamming these. It would be much better if you spent your time cycling and managing your HOTS as opposed to using a burst heal situationally. But it's good to have a burst heal just in case. It may be worth considering slotting a shield of some sort. This can either be for selfish reasons, to give yourself a bit of extra bulk while you're experiencing some pressure, or as a means to further reinforce your group. If your group is about to partake in a risky push, it's not a bad idea to proactively shield them. Shields also come in clutch when your allies are in execute. Depending on the kinds of buffs that are available to you via your class toolkit, it may also be worth considering slotting skills that can provide debuffs. Debuffs like Fracture or Breach, Maim, Vulnerability, and Defile are all very strong, and by slotting abilities that can provide these debuffs, you free up bar space on your allies' ability bars. When playing as support, there are a few gameplay mechanics that you'll have to keep in mind, or seek out the opportunity to employ. For example, like all other PvPers, supports also have to be mindful of their buff uptimes. Besides managing your buffs, you'll also have to manage your healing over time abilities and debuffs. Ideally, you will want as close to 100% uptime as possible on these abilities. Some skills may be used situationally, like I only like to use the skill Living Dark when I'm experiencing a lot of pressure, or if I need to heavy attack and I don't want to be too vulnerable while doing so. I will only incorporate this skill into my rotation in the aforementioned circumstances. Otherwise, it isn't necessary to use, and I'd rather just stick to healing my allies. Much like how damage dealers have burst combos where they'll line up a bunch of skills to deal a whole bunch of damage, you too need to consider what your burst heal combo is. How are you going to protect your ally while they're being bursted? Each class and build will have different burst combos. My burst combo is first applying Ward Ally to proc my perfected BRP Resto, which will provide the shielded ally with major vitality. This skill is very easily bar swap cancelled, so I'll cast it and then immediately swap over to my sword and board bar and apply my burst heal, Breath of Life, until they are comfortably out of the danger zone. I always have my overflowing altar up as well, so an ally that enters execute may synergize with it to restore a great chunk of their health. If I feel that I can afford to stop applying my burst heal, I'll be sure to double check that all other hots are ticking on them, and reapply any that are not, including ground hots. Not all supports will spec into being tanky, but a great deal of them do. In fact, supports don't have to just be healers, they can often be debuffer tanks as well. As a support, it can help to be able to take some damage to alleviate that strain from your squishier damage-dealing friendos. You can also run into crowd control traps or take some ultis to the face while your allies counterattack with ultis of their own. In this clip, you can see that I purposefully run into all of these Daedric mines to clear the way for my allies behind me as they run up, ult dump, and clear the room. That way my allies weren't hindered by being CC'd and could comfortably apply pressure. By being tanky, you can also refrain from using a global cooldown to break out of a soft CC, and instead continue to focus on healing your allies. If I ever get fossilized, oftentimes I'll just break free from the hard CC portion of the skill, and then remain stationary and keep focusing on healing until the soft part of the CC wears off. The same can be said about Bombard. The more global cooldowns that you can spend on healing your allies, the better, and by being tanky and likewise being able to handle some heat, you can accomplish just this. Mobility is super important on a support. You need to be able to keep up with your group and outmaneuver enemies. Skills like Race Against Time are a great way to remove immobilizations and also provide yourself with a really nifty speed buff to be able to accomplish just that. It may also be worthwhile to consider utilizing a swift jewel as well. I'd also recommend getting used to the notion of strafe jumping. Christopher ESO has a really great video that details this big brain strategy. Besides strafe jumping to cover more distance, I also find it useful to hop while moving around. By hopping, you can guarantee that your trajectory isn't compromised should you get CC'd. For example, if I jump in one direction and get CC'd mid-jump, I'll still land in the spot that I was aiming to get to, whereas if I was just walking while I got CC'd, I'd stop dead in my tracks. And there you have it. There's my extensive rundown on a whole bunch of strategies and sets and skills that I've considered and implemented while playing the support role in PvP. I hope that you're able to take something away, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm not sure when you'll be watching this video, but it is important to note that metas shift and change, as do the stats and likewise viable nature of sets. So I could have very well not included a set or something that should be considered when you're watching this video. But I did my best to discuss everything that's relevant as of recording this video. Good luck out there on the battlefield, and if you're on PCNA, maybe I'll see you out there. Cheers, guys.